Good evening and welcome to the 281st meeting of the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium. I'm Ben Katcher. I put together this free and independent lecture series covering a variety of text, image work, comics, animation, illustration, and the history of those fields. Our guest tonight is in the box next to me. I don't know what, you could wave, Jim. Our guest tonight is Jim Woodring. He wrote and drew his first Frank story in 1992, I've read. Since then, he's created a body of autobiographical material collected in the book Jim.
I'll be right back.
His allegorical picture puzzles were collected in Seeing Things, 2005. His graphic novel, Weathercraft, 2010, Congress of Animals from 2011, Fran from 2013, along with other books, prints, animation, and artifacts. His work has earned him numerous awards, including a United States Artist Fellowship with the musician Bill Frisell in 2006, an Inkpot Award at the 2008 San Diego Comic-Con, and most recently, The Stranger, the newspaper, named him their 2010 Literature Genius. He lives on Vashon Island in Washington State. He's been described as a man who has enjoyed three exciting careers: garbage collector, merry-go-round operator, and cartoonist. It would have been fascinating to have followed Jim Woodring in those earlier careers, but we should count ourselves lucky to catch him tonight in the midst of his current career, the cartoonist. He's here to discuss his latest book, And Now, Sir, Is This Your Missing Gonad? That's from Fantagraphics. There it is. So here's Jim Woodring.
Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. Well, this is a particularly difficult book for me to talk about because it doesn't have a storyline that I can explain. It doesn't have arcane symbology that I can explain. It's a lot of drawings which have been assigned captions, which most of them were never intended to have. And so it was a little bit of a puzzle that ran mostly on luck and intuition, and that little fluorescent frisson you get when you achieve something of that nature. Hold on just a minute. I have to pick up my cat or she will distract me. This is my cat, Betty. So I have a slideshow here to help me talk about this thing, which is not so easy for me to talk about. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, I have a lot of drawings that are about this size and of about this complexity that I've done over the past 10 years to help me figure out what things should look like, to look at relationships that I might use in a story, just to develop props, scenics, characters, and situations. And this is a drawing that I made of a character and a situation that is in the new Frank material that I'm working on now. So this actually was a design for something that got turned into something, which most of these other drawings are not. But this is a magician showing Frank a magic trick, and it has nothing to do with gonads. The caption, "And now, sir, is this your missing gonad?" presented itself, and it was so right that I adopted it. And as is the case with so many of these things, after I thought about it a little bit, I thought, well, Frank doesn't have any gonads, so it doesn't make sense that way. But on the other hand, you can see his gonads are missing, so it does make sense. And that's the kind of, extravaganza of good old-fashioned fun that I like to try to have with these drawings. During the 90s, I had a regular slot in the Seattle newspaper, The Stranger. They just gave me a place to put cartoons, and I would take whatever I was working on and stick a caption on it. and they would run it. And some people liked them. I ran into people who had cut them all out and saved them and prized them, and other people wrote to the paper to demand, not to ask, but to demand that they stop running them. So I thought, this is good. I should go down this track, because the thing that I enjoyed the most about it was, well, for example, if you can look at a painting by Yves Tanguy or any other surrealist, and you've got some abstract, unprecedented, irrational image, and then a title that goes with it. And in the best cases, the titles work so beautifully with the drawings in ways that you can't connect. And I remember as a young person discovering art in the world and surrealism and word games and all that sort of thing, that particularly struck me as an art, coming up with a title for something that really worked with it in ways that weren't purely descriptive. And so here's a random sampling of these stranger cartoons. This one's pretty self-explanatory. This is a panel from a comic that I just colored and put up there. I found out later that the line, "Here comes everybody," is a famous line from James Joyce. Another panel from a comic that just got turned into a standalone. This one was one that got a particularly powerful response. And this, of course, is a William Faulkner reference. So some of these things got pretty highfalutin. Anyhow, when I gathered up all these drawings and I had decided to caption them for this book, the task of doing it was daunting, and it's hard to describe, but I will try. This picture here is for a sequence that I never actually worked out called The Living Rock. And I initially gave it this caption: I don't really think I'm a bad person. Selfish, yes, but not bad. And that's something that the writer Henry Miller said about himself later in life. And I thought, ooh, that's terrible. That's a bad thing to think. But it worked so well with this drawing because you've got the speaker and the listener and the kind of Greek chorus reacting to it down below. So I was really happy with this, but then I felt bad that I was kind of ragging on Henry Miller, who wasn't around to defend himself, even if I wasn't naming him, which I just did, I guess, come to think of it. So I've completely defeated my attempted altruism. But for the final cartoon, I changed the caption to something about dancing. And here's a drawing that's not in the book. I did it after the book came out, but if you look at it, you can sort of, I mean, take a few seconds and think of a caption for this picture. It wasn't intended to have one. It's not an action that can be described. It's not, you know, I mean, the idea that came to my mind was shun occult powers like poison, my child, but it doesn't work either. So if I were actually doing this for the book, I would have spent a long time coming up with alternate titles until I got one that gave me that frisson. And initially, I wanted it to be one of those books that I was always looking for when I would go into a used bookstore. I would go to the humor section and I would look for a tall, slim book of cartoons or drawings. And I wanted this book to have that kind of retro quality to it, to be one of those books. And I even designed a cover for it. Whoops. I even designed a cover for it. Oh, there's the big reveal. That I thought did a good job of capturing the kind of careless, ugly, stupid, nonchalant art direction that went into the covers of a lot of those books in those days. I thought that was really charming. But Eric Reynolds at Fantagraphics, hold the phone, what's going on here? Bear with me, please. Eric Reynolds at Fantagraphics had the idea of taking this book, Happiness is a Warm Puppy, which I bet you remember from 1961. It was a big hit. It kind of revolutionized graphic design in pop culture. And Eric saw my book, and his genius level breakthrough was to make it less retro than I had made it, and to make it so that it looked like it was a contemporary of this book. So Justin Allen Spencer, the designer there, came up with this cover for the book, which does make it look like a contemporary of Happiness is a Warm Puppy. And he colored the pages so that there are these sort of arbitrary slabs of color that the cartoons march through. And when the book is closed, it creates a beautiful spectrum. Now, one of the things I've been wrestling with these drawings is the idea that it seemed obvious to me that the captions and the images are just joined at the ends. They form kind of a two-legged thing waiting for a third leg to make it a solid structure. And I thought that was what the reader would bring to it. But then with this treatment, with these colors, it became three things that were connected at the ends. And you would need a fourth thing, and you would have a square or a parallelogram, which is not stable. So the whole thing became kind of more perfect because it became less possible for it to become perfect, if you know what I mean. I mean, there was less of an actual way for things to work out. And plus, visually, when I first saw it, I thought, this is great. My drawings look like flies caught in different colors of Jell-O. This is really unusual looking. And then when I started looking through it and realizing that the colors affected the way that the pictures are seen, they affect the emotional timbre of the drawings, and they kind of smear it around and play havoc with it in some cases. I thought, well, this is great. This is much better than anything I could have thought of on my own. So I'm grateful to Eric and Justin for doing this. And since I don't really have all that much to say about these things, I will milk it and say that the various ways I came up with captions for these were, a lot of these are riffs on famous cartoons. This is a gag cartoon by T.S. Sullivan. And in case you can't read the caption, Mr. Hippo is saying, I lost my balance on the streetcar as the streetcar started today, and I sat right in a monkey's lap. And Mrs. Hippo says, oh, I hope you apologized. And Mr. Hippo says, no, it was too late, but I'm going to send a wreath. That's a cartoon that a lot of people have seen because it was in one of the most popular anthologies in the mid-20th century. And so I took the rhythm of that caption and put it under this drawing. The composition is similar if you compare it to that of the Sullivan cartoon. And people picked up on what this was riffing on right away. It's fairly arcane, it's buried fairly deep, but people picked up on that and liked it. And I don't know how many people are going to get these intentionally hidden things in these cartoons, but whenever it happens, I think it's kind of a sort of a nice little meeting of the minds across a certain distance. And then some of the drawings already had the captions. This is a sinister story that I only took so far and then I had to abandon. And this picture was called Mural Coronation. And you can see, you know, it's a fairly straightforward drawing. You can see what's happening in it, but in color, it turns into this icy, end of the world. It's more frightening, it's more sinister, and I mean, that's such value added. I really, really, really like that. Again, it's a thrill to me to be able to see my own drawings transformed into something and given qualities I didn't intend them to have. And then another way I captioned these things is I would take a drawing like this and I would give it a long block of text, something that I had previously written and often had another purpose intended for, but sacrificed for this. So in this case, I don't even remember what effect I was going for here, but there's this creature who I think of as going, yes, like that character in the old Jack Benny show. And I just stuck this paragraph of text under it. and completely gave the whole thing a personality and a setting and a meaning and a purpose and a valuable social commentary. And again, for people whose screens are too small to read this, I'll read that text, and it says, "So now my sister is absolutely furious with me for showing up drunk and not dressed up, and I don't even try to get to the front. I sit down by the door and I watch them get married, and I'm like, wow, that's superfluous. So now they're pronounced man and wife, and when they come up the aisle, she gives me such a furious, judgmental look, like, I really hate you. I literally hate you. And I said, oh, go screw yourself, bitch, loud enough for everyone to hear. I wasn't mad. I was in control, but she went crazy." So that's a lot of reading, but I think it's very well worth it. And then the other caption was just a little phrase that I thought stood well on its own, that I thought married well to the images that I selected for them. It's really not much I can say about this. Anyway, I have a few of these here. I'll just, Ben, do you think I ought to read these captions? Do you think not everybody can read them?
Sure, that one is kind of small. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is the conversation between doctor and patient. And the doctor says, "Do you accept this gift? Say it out loud." And the patient says, "I accept it." The tourist says, "Is this the Museum of Sex?" And the cool youth deacon says, "No, man, it's an Anglican church." But really, it's the Museum of Sex. The boy, who is the pup, says, "Say, my family just moved into the neighborhood, and I just stopped by to tell you that we rule the roost around here from now on." And the woman, that's Pupshaw, says, "That's great. Our old boss came to a sticky end." I'm really enjoying reading these to dead silence. This one just strikes me as intrinsically funny. I don't know why. Maybe it's Pupshaw's reaction. 8, 9, 10. And here's one. I can't read the caption because it's covered up, but it's very dire. Here, I'll move the window so I can see it. It's like a vaudeville routine. The nut says, the loony, he's called here, "It's terribly frustrated. It can't reproduce." And the straight man says, "That can't be bad." And the loony says, "It's very bad." I don't know why I chose these cartoons. They're not especially notable. This one I think everybody can read, so I won't read it. I like the idea that if anybody, say somebody's in a cabin and they don't have anything else to read, so they've got to look at this book for a long time. I like the idea of going from, typically you glance at the picture, you read the caption, then you look back at the picture to see if it makes sense. And by the time you've absorbed the picture, you go back to the caption. So in the hands of people with very limited entertainment options, there's actually a lot packed into these things. I love the coloring on this. As the ice melts. This looks like it was intended to be topical, like it was intended to be about climate change, but it's not. Not at all. The endless beaver mystery. It's one of the few drawings I've done that I kept. I gave it to my wife. Stand back while I unpack, which for a while I hoped would become an international catchphrase, but it didn't catch on. And this is the last one. This is my personal favorite from the connection. I think it is the most eloquent, the most compact, and in a sort of semi-homeopathic sense, the most powerful. And that's my story. So how do I get out of screen share?
Just at the bottom, there's a little.
Well, I have to,
Yeah.
the bottom of what? Because see, I'm still stuck.
Oh, okay. I think I can.
I'm still stuck in PowerPoint.
Right. Oh, yeah. Escape from PowerPoint.
Okay, hold on. Okay, very
Is
good.
it? Yeah, and then you'll find that.
Okay. Well, I'm still there.
So yeah, people, would you like to open it up to questions, or do you want to?
Yeah, sure,
Okay,
sure.
so if you
Think
have
about
a question, just put your name in the chat, and I'll what do you call it? I'll unmute you. Let me get rid of this. Get rid of that. So
now all you can see is mine. So how do I get out of share screen?
oh wait, there now.
Oh, now it's gone. There you did.
Okay. So
Thank
wait,
you.
we have a couple of a question from Brett. I have to find him.
We're actually watching the share screen still. I was going to suggest what you do is you at the top of your screen it says stop share.
Oh, sorry.
There it is.
Okay, wait, I'm trying to find all these people.
Well, we want the share screen, don't we? We just don't want the PowerPoint.
Right, unmute. Okay, Brett, I think I've unmuted you. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Brett. I got a quick question. You said you kept one of those drawings, saved it for your wife. What do you do with all the other ones then?
I give them away, or I sell them, or I tuck them away in the archives and forget about them. Sometimes I post them on my website in the store, sell them that way. Sometimes I have a sale and I sell them that way. They just mount up around the house, so if anybody contacts me and wants to buy one, I usually have some to show.
Okay. Laura P.
Hi, I have a question. I have two questions, if I'm allowed. Did you rearrange the book when you saw the color of the pages, or did you just let it roll? Like, did it change which drawings you put on which color?
No, not at all. I just let it fall entirely to chance.
I guess that kind of answered the other thing, because I think it's just, do you like the process of discovery and finding the words, because you don't set out with the word, then the image, it just all unfolds?
Yes, I do. It's a little bit like tinkering with electronics. When it works, it works. So, and it's such a mysterious process, you know. It's a wonderful thing that you can have two irrational images and one will be more powerful than the other and you can't explain why. And this is allied with that and with all those, you know, famous word games and everything. So, yeah.
Thank you. I like this part of it. It expands it instead of constricting it. So I'll mute myself if anyone else has.
Yeah, Michael Avolio.
Hi, thanks for doing this and being here. My question is a logistical one. The book as printed has the 3 different colors plus black, and I'm wondering what the paper color actually was.
That is a good question. I believe it was white. I don't know. You would have to ask Justin. It's far more sophisticated than anything I understand technically. But you know, now that I'm looking at it, the edges of the paper are colored. You know, the rainbow effect there. So
Right.
Now that you bring that up, I really don't know how it was done. That's interesting.
Yeah, Matt Croft says it was white.
Oh, okay, good.
Well, Justin, I'm sorry, Justin. And now a question from Matt Croft.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I hear you.
I find myself humming when I'm reading Frank and sort of creating a bit of a soundtrack. I just wonder what you think the unifactor sounds like.
Sounds like animal noises and little grunts of exertion and screams of pain and the wind through the leaves and all those natural noises from sources we're not familiar with, that kind of thing. I guess there's music in the sense that you sometimes people playing a phonograph or something like that. So music exists in this world, certainly. That's a good question, thank you. But no, the truth is I will sometimes just lie on the sun and imagine the sounds in that place. The little chirpings and clickings and hummings and buzzings of the creatures in the bushes and so forth. It's very comforting to me.
Cool.
Okay. Trying to unmute Jody. I'm having trouble. Oops, sorry. Can you speak, Jody? No.
Someone type my name, it says.
Wait, let's, I don't know why I'm having trouble unmuting you, but.
I see a question. What kind of pen and ink do I use?
Yeah, you could read some of them off there.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked me about that because I like to talk about gear. Unfortunately, I don't think my camera will show this very well. Oh, I must have left it lying around somewhere else. Here it is. The Browse finger feather nib, shaped like a pointing hand.
Okay.
Browse finger feather. It holds a lot of ink. You can put a reservoir on it. It's stiff so that it doesn't go crazy when you lean on it a little bit, but it gives you a very good varied line. And for ink, I like Dr. Martin's Bombay India ink. It's thin as water, pitch black, dries to a beautiful uniform density, and is bulletproof. It's waterproof, heat proof, and light proof.
Okay. Rich, I think a question from Rich.
Shinaz.
Shinaz, hi.
Thanks for unmuting me, and thank you, Jim, for this this great view of your studio. The large framed artwork in the back, I can't quite make it out. It's a little blurry. Is that a Little Nemo or something?
Yeah, that's a Harrison Cady drawing.
Whoa. From, was it published?
I haven't been able to find where it was published. I've looked into it. Some books on him have come out recently, and I've contacted Cady scholars, but I haven't been able to find where it was published, if it was.
Maybe an old issue of Life magazine?
It looks to me like an end paper from one of those Thornton Burgess books. It's the right proportions.
Wow, must be amazing.
It's nice to have it around. I have to say, I look at it all the time, and it's such a pure form of cartooning. It really gives me a lift just to see it. So much dignity and power packed into those pictures.
Yeah, his line work was very clean.
And his sensibility, just so, you know, his work for children anyway was just so wholesome and robust and sweet, but engaging. I mean, I don't know how he did it. It's a miracle. Everybody likes it.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Somebody I saw asked about the giant pen, and I have that right here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
That's the pen. So that's, I did see a question about the pen, and that's it. I keep it handy.
There's a
There were other
question
questions, but I missed them.
from Daniel Theodore. How did you get or make the background mural?
How did I what?
I think that's to me. With me, I'm just using a background on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
From the Unifactor.
Oh, I see. Someone's asking you that, right?
Yeah, but I did want to ask, part of it was already answered because you mentioned Harrison Cady as one of your influences. I certainly, one of the things I find in the Frank books is that I am amazed and drawn in right away and love it. And then I'm confused by it. And then I think about it and I'm confused by it. But I kind of like that sense of confusion that makes me feel like the real world.
Well, it sounds like you're engaged, and I can't ask more than that. Thanks very much.
But what other influences do you? I like a lot of the decorative work reminds me of Art Deco work that I saw in old catalogs in the 30s and 20s sometimes. My grandfather was a commercial artist who did all those backgrounds on Lafayette catalogs and things like that.
Oh, right. Neat. Yeah, well, you know, as far as influences go, too many to name, you know. When you're interested in art, you see so many things and you soak it all up. John Held Jr. was somebody whose work influenced me really profoundly. James Gilray. Boris Artzabashev, Johnson Neal, Claire Briggs, Justin Green. I have little pieces of works of theirs around. There's a Jack Davis drawing, a Stanislav Shikalsky drawing I got. So those people all influenced me.
I have no talent, so I just collect the art and put it up so they can influence me in a positive way. So
Well, that's nice to hear. That's
I
good.
have 2 pages of I think Frank #1 up on in my walls.
Oh, really? Well, that's nice to hear, man. Thanks very much.
I love those things,
Means
and I
a
have
lot.
several other pieces of yours up, along with 2 drawings by Harrison Cady, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, how cool. Well, too bad we can't get together and have a beer or something.
There's a question from Amy about.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks so much. My family loves your work. Our 10-year-old daughter is here with us, and she draws nonstop. And so we're just thinking, we wanted to know what you thought about what inspires you and how you found your focus when you were starting out.
Well, I think I just drew nonstop. I wasn't a talented artist. I wasn't good at all. I didn't draw a picture that satisfied me until I was 26, but I was in love with the potential of imaginative drawing. I saw, you know, as a young person, you see Hieronymus Bosch or Boris Artzabashev, for these people who are doing fantastic things with images, steering your mind wherever they want you to go. And I just thought that's what I want to do, even though I was ill-equipped. I wanted to create work that could steer people like that could affect other people the way that work affected me. And that was, that never wavered. So if your daughter's drawing all the time, I think that's great. I'm always glad to hear when somebody is really into drawing and draws all the time. To me, that's a wonderful gift, just to have that kind of a bent to pursue something as noble as drawing. I think that's wonderful.
She's pretending not to listen, but she's listening. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
No, my pleasure. All the best to you.
There's a question from Gerardo. Oops.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey.
Thank you, Ben, for making this possible. Jim, thank you so much for the magic and the inspiration. I mean, your work is just like really, it inspires us all. I have a question. It's more of a creative process question, right?
Yeah.
What I love and what I'm sure you love about these like single panel drawings in this book is that they are, in a way, they seem to have been created sort of like outside of your head, in that it's not like you plan, it doesn't sound like you planned them, that they came like from within, but because of the nature of the process, that you drew something and then you sort of like came back to it with fresh eyes, and then sort of like the caption, the drawings kind of like whisper to you, you know, what is it that they meant, right? And I find that sort of like getting outside of your head part of the process.
Definitely.
Wonderfully inspiring. I have a question about how you do that you did with your single panel cartoons. How do you do that while working on your sequential work? And the question is like definitely selfish. You know, I do mostly like single panel work, and I enjoy, like, you mentioned Tanguy and, and all the surrealists, the Dadaists, and I love getting out of my head and, exploring, doing that. I mean, and but I would love to be able to do that while we're embarking into a sequential epic, like a story, right? Yet, I have to keep on working hard to figure out like how to do it technically. I see you do that in your work. I mean, and my question is, is there a way in which you could take the process, what you do, this magic that you make happen with your wonderful single panel cartoons, into like a more like sequential narrative, into a story? Like, can you improv a story, walk into, or how do you work on your sequential stories? Is that like a obtuse question?
No, it's not obtuse at all, And thanks for saying all that. But it's a difficult question to answer because I've done autobiographical comics, and I've done a number of comics for other publications and things. And those, doing those was just like it is for anybody. You write a script and you work it out and you do the page breaks and you letter it and you have a comic and you hope it works. But the Frank things have always been kind of a gift from beyond to me. That sounds corny, but it's the truth. I mean, the whole, from the first strip, they have just come to me. And as I've drawn them, I've noticed that there's a pattern to the way that they unfold. Every story ends approximately where it started. Every story has a point or a moral to it. Every story introduces a new character. And all I had to do was go somewhere quiet, write down these stories, and draw them up. And it was like a gift. It was like a spider spinning a web. I just knew how to do it, which is not typical of me at all. I'm not generally competent, So that was a great thing. And there was a time when I did Congress of the Animals Run, I diverted from what I had done, the script that I had received, and it just made my life a living hell while I tried to fix that damage. I had to do a certain kind of penance for it. I had to steer things in another direction, but it wasn't until I realized the error of my ways and relinquished authority back to the source that everything started to work well again. And then I saw that it had been working behind the scenes and planting things in the work I thought I was making up so that I could redeem it later on. And the final flowering of all this is that I'm doing 100 pages of Frank stories now, which are going to surround and interweave the 3 books, Congress of the Animals, Fran, and Poochie Town, and contextualize and explain and re-engineer that story arc. So many things will become clear when this book finally comes out, for people who give a damn about this particular enterprise.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for all that. That was nice.
Question from Alejandro.
Alejandro?
Yeah. I need to unmute.
Mute. Mute have no enemies.
Keep muting. Wait. Well, it's been typed. Could you please talk about your little book, The Hero with 1,000 Excuses? I believe its captions bear some resemblance to some processes you've talked about.
I think it does. It's I had a series of drawings, and I strung them together with the loose theme of the hero with 1,000 excuses. So it kind of riffed off the book, the Joseph Campbell book, and the things in it, the crossing of the first threshold and atonement with the Father, and all of those things are represented in this. But it's a lot of, I have notebooks filled with this kind of gobbledygook that I write, and I just sort of haul some of it out and put it in an anvil and beat it into readable shape and tuck it in there and set it afloat. Yes.
There was a question from Mary Bryn. I'm also having trouble unmuting. Have you ever made stone lithograph drawings?
I made one. I made a stone lithograph of a frog being struck by lightning. And I thought it was tremendously successful, but for some reason it hasn't proven popular.
And Richard has another.
Do you have it available? Are you selling it, or do you have it available to see somewhere?
Yeah, I think it's on my website in the store, in the print
I
section.
just imagined that your way of working would lend itself to that, being able to have a really nice tonal variety of grays.
Well, I tried to. I wish I could do a second one because I learned a lot doing the first one. But yeah, it was wonderful. Working on that marble surface was beautiful. It was a lot of fun. It was felt good.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Another question from Richard Shinehouse.
Yeah, well, I had two quick ones, but you've answered one of them about further narrative work from about Frank, and it sounded like you're going to be publishing like an omnibus with added material with 3 of your previous books. Is that how?
A single 400-page book.
From Fantagraphics?
I hope so. I'm wondering what the world is going to look like by the time I'm finished with this work. I hope they'll publish.
Yeah, good point.
They're still in business. They're still working. So
great. I look forward to that.
They'll survive.
And my second real quick question was about, you said you sort of started out with single panels, mysterious single panels in the newspaper. Was that your first published work?
Oh, no. No, that was just in the 90s. You know, I guess my very first published work was in the high school newspaper.
Oh, you started early.
Well, yeah, I tried. See, in high school, my best friend was a great cartoonist, and I was like, there were 3 cartoonists. My best friend was a great one, and I was the worst. So it was painful for me, but I tried. The stuff I did back then was so bad, I haven't saved any of it.
It's all gone.
But that should be a valuable lesson to people who find this beating of the head against the wall tiresome. Eventually, I really had obstacles to break through, and I was able to do it. So diligence and determination are the key, I think. More than talent, more than anything else.
Between high school and 26.
Between high school and 26, I lived an existence that I try not to remember. I drew a lot during that time, but I got all of the insanity that I ever hoped to possess out of my system during those years. And it was rough for me and for people around me.
Well, seems to have paid off.
Well, I survived. I outlived a lot of people. That helped.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trying to, Michael Dooley had a question. In what specific ways has the art and/or humor we've just seen been shaped by Held, Gilray, and/or other artists who've inspired you?
Well, when I was young and I was really getting into that kind of thing for the first time, John Held Jr.'s work had a mystical charge for me. I would look at those drawings of sheiks and flappers out in the moonlight, and there was just something about it that made me feel like I was looking at something heavy and symbolic. I don't know why. The same with Harrison Cady. It just had this charge. So I don't know if you can see it stylistically in my work, but in terms of creating work that looks one way but affects you another way, that is something I've tried to do. I think it was sort of delusional of me to feel that way about it. And so trying to preserve that in my own work is sort of trying to preserve something that was never there in the first place. But it did give me a direction to go in and something to think about while I was failing. So I was glad to have it.
There's a question from
Share some
Jason.
thoughts or a story about Jack Kirby, he asks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Jack Kirby did pitch art for Ruby Spears when I worked there, and he would come in and tell us stories. I remember one time I asked him if he had ever seen the movie Rope by Alfred Hitchcock. And his face darkened. He goes, yeah, I saw that movie. I didn't like it. It reminded me of that World's Fair where they introduced scuba diving. You're in a theater and all you can see on the screen is underwater and you don't come up for air. You're trapped underwater and you can't get out. You can't get out. I had to get out.
Huh.
And that was his review of the movie Rope by Alfred Hitchcock. He would say things like that. I think he was deliberately being a little bit whimsical or something, but he was wonderful to talk to. He was a real stand-up guy. Somebody says, yes, please, any Ruby Spears stories. I loved those horrible cartoons, especially Rubik the Amazing Cube. Oh, man, I used to weep driving home after being in that studio working on Turbo Teen or Rubik the Amazing Cube. I mean, it was... The thing that was so frustrating is, yes, Jack Kirby did artwork for these shows. Duncan Marchbank worked there. David, I'm failing, he's now a producer at The Simpsons. They had these great, great artists. And it was like buying racehorses and turning them into dog food. They didn't need these great artists to produce this dreck. So it was that the contrast between the talent that I got to work with and the final product was agonizing. Gil Kane worked there. He did beautiful, beautiful work, and you know, it never injected any quality into the product at all. Painful it was, painful.
Right.
Turbo Team.
Daniel Theodore?
Yep.
Hi.
Hi, I just asked, I was thinking a lot, because Frank tends to be a wordless strip, it reminds me of silent animation or silent comedy. Somewhat in the vein of, I guess, what Ken Deitch does in a little bit, that his work is so involved in that. But I more like silent comedy, that he's a physical comic like Buster Keaton or something. I guess I'm asking, what are your influences in old movies? If you watched them, you don't care. Obviously, you mentioned Rope.
Right. No, I love old movies, and you know, I will watch a good movie any old time. But in terms of films that influenced me, when I was a kid, I don't want to belabor this point, but I had some funny perceptual problems, and I remember seeing the Fleischer Brothers cartoon, Bimbo's Initiation, when I was a little kid, and I didn't know it was a cartoon. I thought it was a documentary about a place you could go or something like that. And I wanted to go there. I thought, that's for me, man. I want to be in a place where things like that happen. So that cartoon has probably influenced all of my work more than anything else I've seen. It even provided a philosophical spring, because, you know, that's a very sly cartoon. There's a scene when they're down in the basement of this place, and the music is from Morpheus in the Underworld. So it's, you know, I mean, they kind of knew what they were doing. They were just throwing in symbols at hazard, pools and corridors and stairs. I mean, these are all charged things, and they used them in such a frighteningly funny way. It obviously meant a lot to me. So there's that.
John Hanlon, are you unmuted?
I don't know. I think
yeah,
so.
you are. You are.
Okay. No, Jim, I was just wondering, what are you reading now?
I'm reading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I'm halfway through it. He's describing his experiences in a concentration camp for 3 years, and now he's about to explain how he took the lessons that he learned and turned them into a psychological technique for helping people find meaning in their lives. It's a very heavy book.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What are you reading?
For some reason, I've been in the mood to read ghost stories. So I'm reading the Library of America put out a two-volume set of American fantastic tales. So it's ghost stories and horror stories by people like Nabokov and Truman Capote and things like that. So
I'll bet I know
something about autumn that always makes me want to read ghost stories. And I guess the present situation just makes me want to, you know, read something eerie or unsettling.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I probably know a lot of those stories. I read those avidly when I was younger.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else?
Here we are.
I think, let's see, and if anyone else has a question.
Are we done?
Maybe, I don't know.
You asked me to unmute.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Ray. Hi. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I didn't know if that worked. Sorry.
Yeah, it's an appropriate question for talking about muting. So Bimbo's initiation is a talkie, not a silent movie, and you know, I first got to know your work via Jim, which had a lot of words, and I enjoyed the words. And I always enjoy the cover copy that you put on the Frank books. I assume you're the little guy working in the back office on those blurbs. So I love the Frank books, and of course you should do whatever the hell you feel like at great length. I do wonder sometimes if you ever feel the impulse to combine the words and graphics again in narrative form.
Oh, all the time. The one thing I don't want to do is do another autobiographical comic. I mean, I can't imagine trying to draw myself now. It'd be, nobody would enjoy that. But I do have this thing that I've been working on intermittently. I came to feel that the cartoon pig is the most underutilized trope in the profession, and that the world needed some good cartoon pigs. And so I've got these characters I've designed, and I've drawn probably 200 pages just of sketches of them talking and acting. And I'm hoping to come up with something kind of easy to draw and streamlined with a slightly wavery line and maybe dialogue that doesn't require super sharp mental acuity, because I think that's going to be my next phase.
Something to look forward to, something to grow into.
Oh, yes, exactly. Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody? Things in the chat.
Somebody mentioned Borges. I saw that fly by. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, people are coming in late. Okay. So thank you. This was great. It's early.
Someone has a question. It's our Sikoria.
Oh, Sikoria. Okay, let me unmute him.
Hi, Jim.
Oh, good.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
This is great. I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this question, but it seems like it's something that comes up a lot. You talk a little bit about kind of collaborating, like letting the colors determine the mood of the comics. And you talked earlier about a Frank story that you were trying to wrestle into shape. And it seems like a lot of your work is about, as controlled as it is, it seems like so much of it is about lack of control. Can you talk about that? I don't know if that's too vague of a question, but
no, I think
like that's very important to you.
No, that's a good question. It's good to see your face again.
You too.
The Frank stuff is, like I say, it comes almost like dictation, and I feel like there's one right way to do it, and so I know if I've got it the right way, and if I don't, I do it over again. So there's very little experimentation in those Frank stories. This book, it's rare for me to collaborate to this extent, to let anybody else do a cover for one of my books or to control the look of it or the design or the mood of it. You know, they just took this thing and turned it into something better than what I had planned. And they could probably do that with all of my books, but I won't let them because I'm determined to control it, even if it's inferior. I hope you don't know what that's like. So this was kind of a one-off, and it made me a little bit nervous to relinquish control like that. But I could see that there's going to be so much value added from it that I just, and it's kind of a one-off, an anomaly. It's not a pure product. It's a freak thing. So it couldn't have worked out better than it did. But ordinarily I leave very, very little up to chance. I'm not you know, painters who start painting on the canvas and they see something, so they go with that and they build it out. I wish I could do that, but it's just not my way. Your work seems very, like you think about it a lot and control it very carefully to get the effect you want.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So I think we're probably somewhat alike in that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
You too.
Question from Jesse.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hear you.
All right, well, I had posted this as text, but I'll ask it for real. The question was, I just was thinking about, you used to do a fair number of these drawings, almost photographic drawings of old mechanical toys.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like the kinds of, you know, man shooting a coin into a
Right.
bear's mouth banks that I used to lust after as a kid.
Right. Wind up.
And I'm just wondering if you can say anything about the inspiration for those. I was just thinking that they're way they contrast with, you know, they're very mechanical, and in a way they contrast with the sort of organic nature of the Unifactor and, you know, Frank's world.
Well, you know, I like those things. I like those old toys. And I think maybe the impulse to make versions of them that were familiar in terms of the aesthetics, but unusual in terms of their function, kind of relates to what underground cartoonists did when they, you know, they grew up loving all this cartoon technique, but they didn't particularly think anything good was being done with it. Mm-hmm. So they took these old techniques and revolutionized the use for them. And this, it was not revolutionary or anything, of course, but it's a similar impulse to take something you love and are familiar with and personalize it by giving it the kind of interpretive, artistic dimension.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be there in all your work.
But it's just, I mean, it's mostly the aesthetics, the fun of trying to draw the crimps, the reflections on the crimps in the tin, and the how
they're astonishing, yeah.
Just it's a fun job.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Jason Little had a question.
Hey, Jim.
Hey.
I was interested to hear about the friend from high school who was a better cartoonist than you at the time.
Oh.
So I feel like I've heard that narrative. I've had that experience too, and I feel like Robert Crumb and Charles Crumb are kind of an example of it. And I just want to know what became of that friend. Did he ever publish your work?
He was the guy who got me my job at Ruby Spears. He was a great storyboard artist and a great cartoonist, a great cartoonist. But he stayed in the industry, and he had kind of a legendary life outside that. His life was kind of a series of outrageous pieces of performance art. He would put himself in dangerous situations and walk away unscathed just by having such a strong sense of net. And he died young, unfortunately.
Do you mind disclosing his name?
His name is John Dorman.
John Dorman.
John Dorman. The late, great John Dorman.
Question from Baltman. We'll unmute him. Baltman?
I'm here.
Oh,
hi.
Hi. The first piece that I found of yours was Frank in the River. It was like a soft cover, short story with Montgomery Ward at the end of it.
Right.
And, the colors in that were just so saturated, it was really sensual to look at because those colors, I love the fact that most of your work is black and white. But that color, I mean, was that a decision you made? Was that, I guess so, since you don't want others to, to take charge of your work. Are you ever going to work in color again? I mean, that was just so lush.
Thank you. I would like to. The reason I got to do that is because that book was slated to be published by Tundra Publishing Company, owned by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle guys. So they had lots of money to invest in a folly like this. This was back when color printing was expensive. So through Mark Martin, who did the Montgomery Wart section, he arranged this and put this together and told me I could do it in color. So I painted them with watercolors, liquid watercolors.
Oh, wow. It's so beautiful. Well, I bought at least 15 copies of that. That was just like my gift one holiday season to everybody. But beautiful, beautiful work. I'm glad I still have a couple of copies myself.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's nice.
There's a written question. If you can, I don't know if you can see that at the bottom of the from Cole. Who has,
I don't.
Do you see that?
I don't see it.
Well, I was wondering if a lot of your stuff isn't meant to have intrinsic meaning. That is to say, part of the creation is that it can be interpreted in many different ways and is meant to be interpreted however. Just like the captions just seem to work or the colors change the meaning, our own readings change the meaning and fit into place. Do you have one meaning that you mean to put into it, or do you often not know what it means either?
For the short stories, I almost never knew what they were about while I was working on them. Frequently they would be done and then I would discover that there was a very obvious pun or an obvious point that I had completely missed while I was writing them. Longer stories require more constructing, more bridging of areas with material that isn't spelled out for me. So they're a lot more constructed because I have to make sure that the story flows well over that length of time. So I pay a lot more attention to it. I think about it a lot more, and the meaning becomes evident to me while I'm working on it. So I know that some of those stories have meanings. Some of them have very specific meanings, and some of them have kind of a more vague metaphysical point to them, but I don't calculate them. I realize that the material can do that, and I try to shape it in such a way that that comes through. But like I've said, these pictures come to me, these stories come to me as if dictated. And if I just stick to the way it comes and don't monkey with it, I get something that I can enjoy. And I think, I mean, it would be silly to say that they all have meaning per se, but I think they all work. If I didn't think they worked, I would not let them out. I would work on them until they did work. And I guess, what does it mean when a work of art works? That it has meaning? These words are hard to use in this context.
Michael Avolio has a few more questions.
Yeah, a couple more. One was, I wondered if you could talk a bit about your reason for putting an ohm on every page of Weathercraft. And I also would love to hear you talk more concretely about your process. I remember you saying that you will put a Frank story down in prose first, and now with this new book, we see that you will do preliminary sketches and drawings to work out ideas and that sort of thing. And I'm just wondering, like the different steps a Frank story, for example, goes through and that kind of thing.
Well, you pretty well described it. I write everything out first. I sit down quietly and I write down ideas as they come. And if they have that little I compare it to fluorescence because I can't see the source of the light, but I can see that it's lighting something up. When that happens, I keep it. And after I've written down enough ideas, I have a story. It just happens. And then I smooth out the storyline and I plan the page breaks and the panel sizes and how it's all going to flow. And then I sketch it all up and then I draw it all up on Bristol and then I ink it. So the story parts just come to me and the rest is just mechanical work. What was the other question?
About the ohms in weathercraft.
Oh, the ohms. That was just something that I thought would be fun to do. I thought you could give it to a kid in a car trip and tell them to find it and it would keep them occupied for a few miles.
Well, I went through and found them on a bunch of different random pages. So.
Yeah, well, good. I thought it would be I thought people might enjoy looking for them. It would give them something to do, kind of a highlights for children vibe, you know?
Right. And the process stuff, do you do thumbnails? Is that what you're talking about with sketching it out before putting on Bristol?
Yeah,
like what size do you do that initial those thumbs?
Well, initially I have pages of templates that I printed out that have got, I think, 12 pages per page of printer paper. So the pages are very small and I just break them into panels and put in words describing what happens there. And then I make bigger thumbnails where I can actually draw the things in the panels to make sure that there's enough room for them and everything. And then I draw fairly tight thumbnails that are bigger than that, just about 70% the size of the finished work. And when that's all worked out, then I start drawing on Bristol. So it's a multi-step process.
Okay, thank you. Very, very informative, and you're such an inspiration to me, and you're one of our greatest living cartoonists. So
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think Richard had another question. Richard Steinhaus?
Yeah. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry to dominate here, but I just had another question about the unifactor and the role of divine presence in there. Is the unifactor part of a religious code that Frank, who is often seen as kind of hapless and not exactly a victim, but a lot of things happen to Frank.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering why. Is there a greater meaning to the things that happen to Frank?
Well, this was going to sound coy, but your guess is as good as mine, because like I say, when these things are working, their origin is as unknown to me as anybody. But I tend to think of it as being just a sort of a model for the condition that we all find ourselves in. I mean, I like to think that Frank just woke up one day and he was in this world and he didn't question it too much and he went out and explored it and his curiosity was rewarded, and that seems to be what this world is about. He was brought into this place, he has a place to live, he has food, he has a support system, and all the rest is fun and exploration and discovery and pain and dismemberment and degradation. You know, the whole wonderful thing that we all get to wander through, except that it's in this little controlled environment. I almost think of it as being in a terrarium or a fishbowl or something. You know, I have a strong sense that Frank is wandering in this world and having these experiences because it gives the force that brought this into being some kind of amusement to watch him do this and to be ignoble, but to persevere, and to have no real virtues, but to be given all these things.
I love that. That's the human condition.
Seems like it. You know, I mean, there's something about him also. He's arrogant. He's like, I like to think like in my case, I popped into this world without any sense of You know, I didn't arrange it. I didn't do anything. Everything was given to me. And 10 minutes after I was born, I was saying, how dare you talk to me that way, as if I was, you know, somebody. So I think there's some of that in him too. He takes a lot for granted. And he doesn't question a lot.
Right. He's very self-centered in a way.
Very much, very much. He's not noble. But he's not bad either. The noblest character in the whole thing is Manhog. He's the only one who's got any potential to get out of there.
Oh, I've got to reread it then and look at it from that perspective.
No, he has range. He's the only one who has the power to get out of that. He almost did in that book, Weathercraft. He had a chance to escape this veil of tears, but he had become too altruistic, so he didn't, and then he got trapped again.
Yeah, you said something about pigs before.
Yeah, the pigs.
And so that would encompass Manhog.
Well, in a sense, yeah. These pigs I'm talking about are cute. They're cartoon pigs.
Oh, different. Okay, we'll wait for those.
Well, very, very different. Yeah, cute little pigs who go on camping trips and, you know, kill animals and things.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
Alejandro had a question. Could you please talk about Walter Foxglove?
Oh, that's just something I made up for the fun of it. There is no Walter Foxglove. It just gives me a chance. You know, I like talking pompously, but I don't want to sign my name to it, so I invented him for that purpose.
Oh.
He's my impresario. Whenever I want to deflect attention from myself, I bring him in.
And I think one last question from Daniel. Can you speak, Daniel? Wait.
Thank you, Alejandro.
No, you just happened to mention that the god is amused by Frank, so I asked, are you? Then you must be amused by Frank.
You know, it's an odd thing, but I really don't know how I feel about Frank. He's never quite settled for me. Every time I draw him, I wonder, am I getting him right? Have I got his proportions right? He changes a little bit, and sometimes I'll think, that looks like him, that's right. So he's very much a mystery to me. I always approach him with a sense of wonder and an open mind. I don't know what he is or what he's doing or anything.
Okay. Have we got to the end? Yes.
Well, how about
you have any concluding remarks?
No, just to thank you for doing this, Ben.
Oh, thank you. It was
Good to
great.
see you again. And thanks to everybody who called in and asked these questions. You know, working in isolation as I do, it means a lot to me to hear from people like this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Take care. Stay well.
Yeah.